You're not afraid of spiders, are you?
Few heroes have spun as much fear into the general Dota 2 populace as much as Broodmother has. Her name alone tends to invoke a variety of emotions within players, from annoyance to fear to absolute anger. Brood is a hero that, while certainly not popular, tends to carry the reputation of being an absolute monster to play against if you're up against someone controlling the hero with experience. This is in stark contrast to the fact that, as the release of this video, Brood currently holds the lowest pick rate out of any hero in the game according to DotaBuff.com. Coming in last place at a downright astounding 0.72% pick rate, even dwarfing compared to the second lowest pick rate, which is Elder Titan at 1.00%, which is more than a 25% increase compared to her. So with this video, I want to shed some light on Broodmother in the current meta, why she's very much an underrated hero, and how to generally get her to work in the current pop environment of 731D. To start things off with, where do you even pick Broodmother? In my experience, I actually prefer picking her as a position 3, but she's more commonly seen as a position 2 hero. That said, I can wholeheartedly verify that both positions suit her just fine, assuming that you play her correctly of course. This brings us to a bit of a caveat though. When most people look at Dota 2, they tend to narrow down their viewpoint a lot as far as picks are concerned. 1 is carry, 2 is ganger, 3 is initiator, and 4-5 are those roles that buy wards and dusts, right? If this is the kind of lens you view Dota 2 through, chances are that if you see someone picking Broodmother as a position 3, you're midway through an existential crisis on why the hell someone would do such a thing and not pick an initiator for offlane instead. It's true that, unlike most offlaners that are popular, Brood doesn't have a stun, and she doesn't bombastically arrive in a teamfight like a Centaur or Tide or an Enigma. What she does do, however, is she almost always wins the lane that she decides to inhabit, and then slowly but surely takes over the enemy jungle as a result of it. This puts an insane amount of pressure on the enemy, and is quite akin to a hero like Techies prior to his rework. Get ahead in the game, and then make sure the enemy can't gain access to areas where they can farm or get vision safely, thus rendering them unable to play the game effectively. While your ganking potential prior to minute 10 is heavily lacking compared to most position 3s, this trade-off is off-rendered mute if you're able to most single-handedly shut the enemy down from playing in their own jungle. Last but not least, it's worth noting that should your position 4 decide to gank early, or even decide to do a tri-lane, Brood is actually one of the potential position 3 heroes that can actually solo lane. Yeah, she won't win from the position until she's level 6, but she can actually leech XP and go reliably without ever being killed. This is a massive plus. Now, how do we go about building this mother of all evil? Brood is a hero that has had her build change tremendously throughout the years. She's been an insane right clicker, an annoying Dagon spammer, and everything in between. Her current iteration, however, actually falls more into the category of being a bit more like Arc Warden. While the hero is able to pump out a lot of physical damage with the addition of her current Aghanim Scepter paired with how much magic damage she's able to produce from her skills and associated items, Brood finds herself being at her strongest when you utilize this part of her. First things first, you need mana. Lots of mana. We're talking hoodwink mana hunger here. Soul Ring is absolutely mandatory on Broodmother, and it plays around her web perfectly, since you mitigate the self damage you take almost immediately and turn it into mana to use on your various abilities. I personally like to get relatively early brown boots on her for added movement speed, just so you're able to be that much more annoying on lane with her. It'll allow you to quickly scramble up a kill if there should be one present. For an example, if the position 5 is pulling and your 4 is stopping them, you can very quickly swoop in to aid them in doing so. While not mandatory, another good early game item to get is Orb of Corrosion. Corrosion is good because it essentially helps you tremendously with getting kills in laning stage, but also proceeds to be viable throughout the rest of the game. It'll excel the damage you and your Spirelings do as you're farming, and it will make towers much more susceptible to would-be pushing coming from you, even if it's only for a few seconds. Another shout out goes out to Urn of Shadows, later upgraded into a vessel of course. This is a really neat pickup on Brood because it gives her a variety of things she wants. Mana regen, decent stats, and the ability to heal herself and or others, or do a bit more burst damage onto enemies. That's not even mentioning how Vessel is a top tier item against a lot of currently top tier strength heroes, such as Bristleback for an example. With a few starting items in place, now's the time to go for what actually makes Brood viable this patch. Aghanim Scepter. Aghanim is everything on Brood right now. Without it, she simply won't work in pubs. With it though, she turns into an absolute monster once you're able to use the item to its full effect. after Aghanims has been acquired, it's a bit of a free-for-all in what you want to purchase. In some games, BKB is the obvious answer, so you're a lot harder to kill. Other options exist, such as Octarine Core, a Theroblade, and even a Scythe of Ice. As long as you go with the theme of mostly being a caster, you can't go too wrong with your items. Oh, and you can of course stack aura items. Your team will love you lots if you buy them a Wraith Pact, and since you can most always stand in a tricky, safe place, your aura should benefit your entire team in any fight you show up in. And yes, her shard is really good. Consider getting it after you've acquired Aghanim Scepter. And thus finally, let's talk about how to actually skill and play our good mother. To start off with, Spin Web is your only choice. You always need it at level 1, since it's what allows us to effectively lane in the first place. You can then mix and match the rest of your skills pretty openly. If you aim to be more aggressive on lane, I would recommend that you get 2 points in Insatiable Hunger and then maxing out Silken Bola afterwards for use by your Spiderlings. Be forewarned though that it's very important you max out your Spin Web before any other ability. It's extremely important to get as many possible webs present on the map as we can, since it's what allows us to effectively play our hero. As for talents, my personal preference is as follows. 3 Spin Web at level 10, 16 Agility at level 15, 400 Health at level 20, and 50 Insatiable Hunger at level 25. So, as you're playing Broodmother on the lane, you want to be aggressive and annoying. Utilize your web to your advantage. It allows you to duck in and out of trees without mercy and makes it insanely hard for people to kill you due to how hard you are to follow. A higher level trick you can use is a bit akin to the current landmine trick you can see on techies. By utilizing your Spin Web, you can plant yourself on top of your own creeps that are in deny range, and the enemy will have a very hard time targeting the creep they want to kill. This is an extremely reliable and annoying way to make sure the enemy can't kill your range creep in particular. Level 6 is where your hero officially kicks off. You now have a massive damage burst at your disposal, and you're able to finally spawn Spiderlings and play with them. Watch out for your mana though. Spawn Spiderlings is the exact reason why we need so much mana regeneration in the first place. Your goal now is to try and shut the enemy carry out of his lane, provided you're playing offlane. Try and use a combination of your Spiderlings and hitting them directly with your ultimate to do so. If the enemy starts to send more heroes to protect their core, good, you're doing your job right and causing the enemy much grief by forcing their movement. You can now fall back and farm a bit more until they ease up on the protection. At around level 9 to 10 you will want to have taken down the enemy tier 1 and preferably start rotating mid with your spider webs. You do this quite easily by extending your webs all through the enemy jungle and onto your mid lane, so you essentially have a lovely arc all the way from offlane through their jungle and over to the river. Your next goal will be, assuming that tier 1 mid isn't down yet, to try and get this. Usually the enemy will be absolutely furious and send just about every person on their team to try and deal with you. Yet again, good. You are now creating a stupid amount of space again, and much like prior, can proceed back to farming for the very important item you should be building towards. Aghanim Scepter. While I don't have the entire feel and timing down to a science yet, my general internal clock is that preferably the item is acquired by 18 minutes into the game, or at the very least 20 minutes. Once you have Aghanim Scepter in your hold, you can now start applying Spinner Snare everywhere on mid. The enemy will still want to kill you, but now, with roots placed everywhere, the supports will usually trip around in them and open themselves up for easy follow-up kills by either you or your supports. This creates an absolute crushing pressure on the enemy, and you can force down their mid lane by doing this until you really start choking them out. Proceed with this playstyle. Take over their jungle, take every tier 2 tower, and make sure that the enemy can't move anywhere effectively due to your Spinner Snare ability. Do they have an Ursa or a Huskar? Place a snare at Roche. Do they have a Luna that wants to farm triangle? Place one there to stop her from doing so. You're essentially locking the enemy out of playing on their side. Globally. Once all outer towers are down, you can choke the enemy nice and snug within their ancient area by way of using Spinner Snare. Keep them locked down in there as your team is able to free farm before pushing together and laying down the killing blow on an enemy that isn't even safe within their own damn base. It does take some serious getting used to play like this, because it's so different than many other heroes on the roster right now. But if you are willing to put in the time and the effort, you might just find a hero you never thought you'd like as much as Broodmother. That's Broodmother for you. This isn't at all a hero that most people are all that interested in, but that's why I figured it would be all the more fun and interesting to make a video and hopefully shed some light on her. What do you think about Brood as a hero? Let me know in the comments below, and of course, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. As always, I like a thumbs up and a follow, and you're able to watch live at twitch.tv/fabcubashi. Now go out there and get some Brood practice. It's time to browse the web.